In Module 3, we're going to take a look at some functions, and we're specifically going to look at quadratics, exponentials, and logarithms. So to start with in Section 1, we are going to review quadratics. So a quadratic is an equation where the highest exponent of the variable is squared. So it's usually written in the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, which is called standard form. The shape is a parabola. So just kind of review, we've got so that's our quadratic. It's a parabola, also known as a U shape. So there are a lot of different ways we can use quadratics to model situations. So a quadratic equation models the height of objects in the air. So if you throw a ball, you shoot an arrow, any missiles, throwing a stone, a quadratic is used to model the height of the object at any point in time. Then we also have cost that can be modeled by a quadratic equation. So like if you have costs associated with making like sports bikes, computers, cell phone, and then also area of rectangular products can be modeled by a quadratic equation. So steel frames, fencing, lots of times used in construction. So along with our quadratic, there are some very important parts of it. So the first one is our vertex. And that is the highest or lowest point of a quadratic. And it does depend on which direction the quadratic is opening and whether or not it's a highest point or a lowest point. We have our x-intercepts. Also known as roots. Those are the point or points where the graph crosses the x-axis, and it specifically happens when our y value is 0. Then we have our y-intercept, and it's the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. So in that case, the x value is 0. So when we talk about labeling the parts of quadratic, so here is a quadratic. So my vertex, in this case, is a minimum because it's a low point. So I have my vertex. I also have my x-intercepts. Of which there are 2. I have my y-intercept, which is there is only ever 1. You can have 0, 1, or 2 x-intercepts. It depends on what your quadratic looks like. But there is always a y-intercept, and there is always one of them. And there is always a vertex. The other thing I want to talk about, I didn't put a definition for it, is something called the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry it is an equation, so it's always x equals, and it is the part that splits the quadratic in half. So the axis of symmetry always goes through the vertex. Because if you think about a quadratic, the vertex is its turning point. It's where it goes back in the direction it was following. So the axis of symmetry is kind of like, all right, this is that x value where I've kind of split my quadratic in half. Let me know if you have any questions about the parts of a quadratic or just reviewing a quadratic in general.